Gamebreaker TV.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GuildCast, episode 49 for November 14, 2012. I'm Gary again. You're watching Gamebreaker. And today, the Lost Shores have been unveiled. We've got video to prove it. Information on the new dungeon PvP map. Elizabeth was so wrong. And controversy over a new gear type. All that and more, of course, your viewer questions. But first, back from a near-death experience in Korea. How are you, sir? I just made that up, I guess. You said, I don't know, you almost died, and I don't know. Scott Hawks.
Hi.
And joining us from Massively, it's Elizabeth Claire. How are you, sir? Sir. Why did I call you sir?
Mute.
Didn't mean to call you sir. Mute.
Mute.
I'm not muted you. I didn't mute you. Just funnier.
Cool. Now we're good. We're good. It's cool.
Good? Oh,
yeah.
You didn't lash back at me?
I said many things and no one heard them, so we're good.
All right. And, of course, joining us, Richard Procopio. What's up, ma'am?
Good to be back.
Mrs.
Mrs. Don't like.
What's up?
Yeah, Mrs. Mrs. Esterhouse.
All
All right, let's talk about the most controversial subject of the week. Let's talk about Ascended gear. Whole new gear level coming in the Lost Shores above Exotic. Story's been changing kind of like day by day. So the reasoning behind us getting a whole new gear level in the content patch is going to be that people were running out of progression. Is that what they're saying at this point? Sort of?
Kind of. So the way I understood it, it's more that like it's not really all that difficult to get rare and exotic items, and the gap between exotic and legendary is so huge that people were feeling that there was a bit of a disconnect, so they're putting in these ascended items to kind of bridge that gap, I guess. So it's like people were getting their exotics, but the grind to legendary was just there's too much of a gap here. And it's not really something that they kind of wanted something in between, which is sort of fair enough, right? So then why, I mean, legendaries are definitely like a huge step beyond normal progression. But then why is everyone completely freaking out?
Because it's seen as being the advent of gear grind, is why. People are saying, well, they never said there'd be a gear grind. If you put this in, then you're adding a new tier. And as soon as you say tiers of gear, people think World of Warcraft and raiding and 3 different tiers. And there's going to be new tiers every few months and so on. So that's why.
Does the progression already exist in between? Like, hasn't it already been in place with legendaries to some extent?
But I wouldn't say, the thing is with legendaries, you got to think that legendaries are a real optional. You know, you don't see. I don't think everybody's going to go after a legendary at all. And where it is they're feeling that once people have got their exotics, if you didn't want to go for a legendary, then for whatever reason, either because you just didn't want to do it, or it's supposed to be a very difficult thing that people to go after, so it put people off if they tried casually to do it. Then they didn't feel there was anything there for people to grasp for. So there is that they're bringing that sense of progression. Now, it's seen that if you need to add that sense of progression, is this going to be continuously added? Is this now saying, well, you've got this here now, once you've got that, then what happens next? Do you need to add a Ascended Plus eventually?
So basically everybody is seeing this as like the possibility, the dipping their toe in the water of a full-on progression system, just showing its head, it's peeking, it's like peeking around the door, hello, hi, progression coming.
Yeah, I think people are nervous that, 3, 4, 5 months from now, there's going to be an announcement that there's like double ascended items and they're going to be slightly even more powerful. And we have no indication that that's going to happen. But I think that's what people are afraid of, that they're going to keep raising the power by little bits and chunks, and therefore creating this, stepping stone. But I think if if you kind of look at it, like think about it like this: if this is the system that we saw in the betas, if this is what we saw at launch, where the exotic level gear was the stuff that every casual person can kind of acquire without too much effort, and then there was a tier called Ascended that was a little bit harder to get and was a little bit better, and then there were legendaries which didn't have better stats than the Ascended, but are just really, really like hard to acquire. Then I don't think people will be freaking out about this so much. So it sounds like they're trying to put this new level of gear in to kind of bridge the gap between the casuals and the more hardcore. But it really is going to be a wait and see about how much people's freakout is relevant, because is this really the start of the stepping stone, or is this just another layer that they're putting in and they're going to kind of leave it put at that point? So it's a wait and see.
So what do you think? I mean, the other interesting thing here is that how they're using the dungeon with increasing difficulty. So my question would be like, is a new level of gear combined with this new mechanic that we're going to talk about in a bit when we talk about the new dungeon that makes dungeons increasingly difficult? Is that the answer?
So their whole idea was that there's this new mechanic in the dungeons that can only be countered because of the way they've set it up through infusions in your gear. And some people are saying, okay, well then why didn't they just make this new tier of armor have the same stats and an extra infusion slot? Which there's not really an answer to, unless this was just something that they already had planned from the beginning. And again, like Richie said, like if Ascended had been in the game from the beginning, I don't think anyone would think about it because it's what they had, but since it's added in, people are like, oh no, they're adding in progression. We're like 2 days away from a treadmill. It's going to be horrible. It's wow. And just freaking out.
So you're not taking this as a freak out. Does anyone not think that this is like possibly them testing out the waters of progression? I gotta say I'll tell you why. I think they're testing it out because I mean, I know from talking to multiple devs, and this was at PAX, because that was right when Guild Wars 2 was launching, right? And I talked to and that was like the hot topic, was Guild Wars 2 was launching, it was hitting, gear progression, that whole thing. And more than one developer all talked about how all these companies do so much, data. They have so much data on this stuff. They do they collect so much data on how players play and look at the numbers. And they're like, look, it sounds great on paper, but the numbers show that a progression system in an MMO keeps players playing longer for a longer period of time. It just works that way. More people just want that progression. And it was a big question, was like, is this going to work for Guild Wars 2? And I know a lot of people were really excited about it. A lot of people who don't necessarily have the time for a progression-based system were really excited about it. Like guys like, me, Richie, things like that. We were all like, yes, this is great. I don't have to think about this whole endgame thing anymore. Like, just grinding. But I have to wonder at this point, now, is it possibly that, the system really isn't all that it's cracked up to be, and that we do need a progression system to keep people really in there?
I think that's what it feels like happening. I mean, as you said, when Elizabeth said there's no real answer to why they didn't just have the same stats, that's the answer why they didn't just have the same stats, was because they are creating a differential between gear. It's only a small one, but it's still there, and it's still something for people to reach. Let's face it, it is gear progression. Even if it's only a little, it is gear progression. So if they're putting in, it's only a couple of slots at the moment, but it's going to be a full set eventually. And so they're rolling it out very slowly in bits and pieces. They're going to be able to take serious metrics on how many people are going that far to get those specific items.
Exactly.
And that will tell them how successful that this is in relation to its stickiness and getting people to stay with the game and keeping them continuing. How often are they running those dungeons to get those pieces? How many people, what percentage, and so on. And they'll be able to tell that, and then roll it out, and then have a look and see if it's something to continue with.
But do you think it's all doom and gloom, Scott? Like, is it really, I mean, I think it's a blow because so much of the marketing, everything about Guild Wars 2 was so much about not having this system. But if they were to have to adapt it and change it over time, would it really be this awful, like, monster that we're all kind of making it out to be?
It's a monster if they release, if they have to release tiered progression gear at a rate that is going to put off people who don't want to have to do that. That is what people get put off by, is feeling every 2 or 3 months there's another piece of there's another tier coming out, I've got to grind to that now. Okay, I've got that. Is that all there is?
But here's the big question: are they really that put off by it? Because like mentally, they might like on forum be like, "Oh man, I'm so put off by this," but then they're out there, they're playing. Like, and that's really at the end of the day what the developer wants is that you're playing the game. So
no, the reason it's an issue is when it's your only content. When the only thing you've got to do is grind for gear at the end of at max level, that's when it's a problem. If you've got lots of other content.
Yep.
If you've got lots of other content to do, and lots of other different things to do, which Guild Wars 2 does have, then it's not as big a problem. But the problem is that existed in MMOs in the past where you get to max level and you can do dailies to get gear, or you can do dungeons to get gear, or you can do raids to get gear. And that's the only thing to do. So if your only model of what to do at endgame is that gear progression, then it's a problem. And because it can get frustrating and boring if you can't reach that pinnacle. So it's about finding a balance. And if they are dipping the toe in the water, it's understandable. And if they're dipping the toe in the water, then it's because they see that currently they are not they're not getting retention to the point that they want.
Yeah, I wouldn't begrudge like ArenaNet looking at any kind of statistics and kind of switching up their model based on statistics to try to improve the health of their game or try to make more money or anything like that. Obviously, it behooves them to do so. It's smart to do so, and it will help the game last longer. The part of it that I don't love, if it goes down that more standard gear progression, is that we talk so much about this being a skill-based progression system, and that the player's skill really was what mattered once you hit max level. And
it's become a gear game.
Yeah, and it kind of loses something like that. Like even this agony mechanic that they're putting in, sounds like a cool idea, but getting more and more of that, infusions basically mitigates it. So it gets easier, not because the player has gotten better. It gets easier because you've got the gear to mitigate it. So I just think. I don't know. I think they have to be careful. I'm not panicking at this moment. I'm definitely much more of a wait and see kind of guy. But that's kind of where my concern comes from. Is I liked the theory of that. When we were talking about it before launch, and I've been enjoying it so far. And I don't have anything against a gear-based game. I played World of Warcraft for years and I loved it. But I was really hoping this was going to be something different.
Yeah, I think you're the most calm person at the moment. Scott, I'll let you know. I want to explain to people, just so people understand what he's talking about with this agony. I want to explain real quick. So like in line with this new focus on progression, the enemies in this new dungeon will apply a condition to players, which cannot be removed through normal means. And it's going to start hurting the player more and more as you progress through the dungeon, which is why you're going to need this new Ascended gear and the infusion item slots that come with it. So how does it work exactly? Just somebody clarify, like, how does it work exactly when you have the gear? It just removes those conditions?
It's essentially...
It gives you resistance.
Gives you resistance,
it's a resist set. And hands up if anybody who loves resist sets. They're always fun, aren't they? I'm very wary about as soon as you start having to get resist sets to do something. Being somebody who's had to do that in raiding before, I think it's a mechanic that is incredibly frustrating. And I want, and as Richie was saying about the idea of skill-based, and from the dungeons that we've seen so far, there's some issues with implementation on when it comes to tuning difficulty and things like that. So if you're going into a place that gets difficult, the more you do it, and then the way to counter that isn't because it's more difficult because a boss has got more complex things he does, or you have to do more things, or your synchronicity with your group has to be better. No, you've got to have a better resist set. That's worrying. I'm not saying it's like that every step of the way in the way that it progresses in difficulty, but it seems that is a large part of it, and I find that worrying.
Elizabeth, you're being very, very quiet over there. You're being very, very quiet. I want to know what you think, because you were always, very much against a gear progression kind of system as well. So Richie's kind of holding back. Scott's going for the jugular. I'm definitely
a wait-and-see person. I've been flooded by people everywhere being just freaking out about it massively and on Twitter and stuff. So I'm very much in the wait-and-see mode. I would hope that they don't make adding new tiers a regular thing, clearly. But I am not going to say that this is the sign of doom for Guild Wars 2, like some people are. Some very few vocal people, I should say. It's not like the entire community is just outraged about this. I don't have necessarily a problem with the agony debuff mechanic and the way that I foresee it playing into the dungeon difficulty. So I'm really wait and see at this point.
I mean, do you guys really think if they were, let's pull this out and unpack it and like stretch it out like, you know, X number of months a year, and let's say that, you know, this little test that they do really shows that, you know, people really worked for it and they went for it, and they start moving more towards this gear progression of a system. I mean, I don't know if it would really change my feelings on how I play Guild Wars 2. Like, I feel like if you're a little bit more of a casual player and you're kind of, you know, in line with being able to, like, you know, not, you don't have to really go for that gear if you don't want to. I mean, I guess if, you know, if it gates you from gear at some point that you can't experience gear, well then yeah, I guess, you know, that's a totally different story. But I mean, I don't know if you necessarily know if this is like total doom and gloom, like the game is going to be like completely like destroyed if they go to a gear progression system.
I really don't think it is, and especially with the way that they're implementing this gear, the only reason you would actually need Ascended Armor is if you're doing the dungeon that gives you Ascended Armor. Because, I mean, people have been doing World versus World just fine without it. People have been doing PvE level 80 content just fine without it. So the only reason you need it is for the mechanic in the dungeon that you play to get it, from what we know. So I really am not doom and gloom about this. And it would take a significant amount of change on ArenaNet's part to make me stop liking the game. Yeah. So, yeah.
And one thing I will clarify a little bit there is I agree with you, Elizabeth, on that, that you only need the gear to do that dungeon if they didn't give any stat increases to it. And
that's such a difficult... Why would they do that?
I know. I actually like the fact that they put that agony thing in. You know, I don't love that it's not a skill-based mechanic, but I do like that if they put it totally, you know, encapsulated into anyone who really wants to see how far they can get in the Fractals dungeon can really work towards getting this gear, and everybody else doesn't have to worry about it. That I love. But the fact that, you know,
the statistical
yeah, because that at that point it almost falls into like almost like a sort of like an RP-ish kind of thing, right? It's kind of like a cool thing around the story and the lore. It's like, oh, you've got to wear this, you know, magical set of armor to go through, which gives you a little bit of a buff to kind of get through and get farther. Yeah, the thing is, it's as soon as they attach stats to it that's when everything gets thrown off, because now it's like, okay, well, is this going to be needed for the rest of the game? Am I going to need to, you know, use this for, like you said, in everything else?
Whether it's needed or not, they're going to go for it. World versus World people, if you're hardcore into that, you're going to say, you know what, I need these rings. I need that back slot. I need the, you know, a little bit more stats just to get that little bit more edge. So, you know, say it's needed or not, people will do it if there's better stats.
And that's why I think, like Scott said in the beginning, I think that's why we're sort of just like, clearly, this is the test of gear progression. Like, they can kind of spin it. Yeah. They can kind of spin it any way they want and say that it's not, and it only has to do with this. But like you all said, they didn't have to put the stats on there. They really could have just had, you know, they could have just had it infused, and that was really much it, and just, you know, lifting agony off on a resist.
And that would make much more sense. Not to
it would
make more sense,
because that's not the point of this. That's not the key here.
Not at all. No. Because what it is that you only need this gear, and it's not you only need this gear to do the dungeon, because you don't need the gear to the dungeon. You need the gear to have done the dungeon repeatedly enough that it's going to cause, that it's at that high enough difficulty level that the difference between winning and losing can be that different. You can still do it, but it's not going to be as easy, and it's going to get more and more difficult to the point where not having the gear is going to be a serious hindrance. Is what it seems to be. But if because the problem is he's adding stats to it, then it means what happens when the next dungeons come along?
Right. Well, and
do you need to have that? You probably won't need to have that ascendant gear.
You need when the ascended gear.
Ascended gear.
Double ascended
gear.
Should be called that.
That goes back to my point earlier, though, is like it really depends on where they're going with this. If they're truly just going to roll out Ascended for every slot eventually, which is going to be slightly better exotic, and they stop there, it will be as if they intended that to be in the game at the beginning. It's just we're in this awkward kind of transition point.
But that almost wouldn't make any sense, right? Why
not? Yeah, there's no point.
There's no point. Just leave the stats off of it at that point.
There's no point whatsoever.
Just leave the stats off of it.
And except if you're saying, well, okay, but what they're saying is, well, people have got their exotics but don't want to do a legendary, so we've got this for in between.
Right.
So when they've got this, then what? You got to have something to go in between them and the legendary, haven't you? You know, you're putting yourself. That's why the people are worried about the treadmill. Is you're putting yourself on that path. You're setting a precedent of needing something to go to bridge gaps between levels of gear. And if you think that's something you need to bridge, you're going to have to do it again at some point.
Two things. First, it'd be interesting if just every dungeon that they add to the game from now on has its own need for infusion, so you can, their idea of progression from then on would be putting different infusions in armor. Second of all, I think it's a really interesting choice that they kind of baked the bonus stats into the skin. So as it is, you have slightly higher normal stats, and then rather than being able to like slot in a sigil or a shard of whatever shiny gem to change the stats around on the armor, they just have those bonuses in. So like you'll have something that drops with like X% bonus to magic find and precision and power or whatever. And it'll be really interesting because it's a lot harder for people to find gear that they want then.
Yeah.
Because like if I really want it to be a magic find set and it doesn't drop with magic find, I'll be like, well, I'm not using this piece of ascended gear. So that seems like a really interesting choice that'll, I don't know if like everything's just going to come out with such good stats that you just want it anyway, or if there's going to be like a super hot trade for people being like, no, I really need like my condition damage gear. I'm going to spend 18 gold on the marketplace for it or whatever. Interesting choice.
It's very random.
It's not like this is going to come flying out at a huge, rapid rate because, is it 2 slots?
Yeah, rings and backs.
Rings and backs.
So even if they did a full set at that rate, it's going to take quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we're going to have three different tiers by the end of the year,
rate. But if the whole litmus test works, how do we know that they're going to keep up that rate? I mean, they could just.
That's true.
If it works, you can just speed up that timeline really quick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how is this going to work? Because they've kind of said that players who have gotten legendaries already don't have to worry about their gear being outscaled, right? So they said ascended weapons are added to the game, and existing legendaries will have their stats boosted.
I think that's smart.
So they're just going to keep they're just like indefinitely as they add tiers of gear, just going to keep making your legendary will always be the
best
uber legendary best in slot it could ever be, and we'll just keep pumping up the stats on that forever.
They've said that it will be your best in slot. Nothing has happened yet to imply that it's going to be indefinitely adding in more things, and that is a ridiculous thing to say.
But what's weird isn't because aren't future legendaries not even really going to be legendary? They're going to be ascended, right?
Yeah.
Which that's kind of weird.
No, they'll be legendary, but they're going to have the power of ascended items.
They're going to have,
Once they ascended weapons aren't in the game at all. We haven't even talked about that, but they did make a mention that eventually they'd like to do ascended weapons, which will have slightly increased stats over exotics, right? And since legendaries are currently equivalent to exotic power level, the legendaries will have to be boosted to the new ascended weaponry status. And I think that's smart because of how much effort people go through. If those become obsolete, I mean, people will go nuts. So I think they have to do that, at least for the short term.
And the thing is just like that they'll just keep boosting it up to that level, the power of the legendary, to whatever is best in slot at whatever time. If they don't, then you can have second tier legendaries.
Yes, exactly.
That's why it makes sense ranking up. And when Gary's saying they've got to do it indefinitely, if they don't, that's what you'll have. Yeah. So maybe they do have to do that indefinitely.
So tell me that everybody flipped out about this. Every forum. I mean, what did that forum post on the Guild Wars 2 forums? What did it go up to? It was something like 70,000.
7,000.
Yeah, it was 127 pages.
Yeah, it was insane. So people are a little bit mad about this. When they jumped on the forum and the blog did a blog post and tried to explain all their intentions. I'm sure you guys have picked. Do you think that they really eased concerns for players, or is it still just as hot as it was?
I think first of all that the number of people making outcry is much less than it would seem. If you go through and look through the forum, a lot of it is the same, 5 to 10 people posting very much, which is kind of its own thing. But it's not like, again, the entire community is completely outraged. And I think some people, maybe the people who weren't necessarily already in full panic mode, calmed down a little bit as they read it and came to the idea that, hey, maybe we should wait a little, see exactly what the stat difference is, that sort of thing. But it has not erased everyone's fears, as we are all examples of.
Yeah, well, one of the things that that I was thinking about, and that the fact that it's only going to be rings and backslots is good for now. But I just don't like the fact, like, I'm level 80 now, and I'm still kind of scoping out all the different exotic sets I can go after, right? And I think it's really cool that I can, like, craft exotic armor, I can get my cultural armor, I can spend karma, I can farm dungeons, I could do, there's a whole bunch of different sets that I can get. They all have the same stats. I could just pick which ones I really want to have and how well they, how well they look. But as soon as we have full ascended gear out there, then it makes all of those options a lot more limited. So I do hope that there's something in the works that somehow we can. I mean, I guess you could still say use transmutation stones, and I guess that's how it keeps those relevant. But I don't know. I kind of like how it is right.
Crappy idea. Yeah, one thing that's nice about it now is that both rares and exotics have the same. No, okay, so exotics are slightly higher, but you essentially have two effectively top gear, best gear sets of tiers of rarity, which means that you have a lot of options. You can craft your armor, you can get this drop, you can get that drop, you can get dungeons, so there are a lot of options. And if they switch to just having this ascended, unless they put in a ton of new skins or reuse a ton of skins, you're going to have everybody looking identical again because everyone's wearing ascended armor because it's the best armor in the game. So if you're saying that your progression is visual, which they have said, that's fine, but all your ascended needs to have a ton of variety, or else it's not visual progression anymore.
Yep.
Let me throw this out to you guys. Now, I want an honest answer here, just like, as far as the community people that you guys are playing with on a daily basis and stuff like that. Now that, almost everybody's 80 at this point, top level. Did you see a large fall off of players and friends and people you were playing with leave because of not having something to progress towards? I personally did. I definitely. I had more friends who were WoW players and still, liking WoW. And they were still really enjoying WoW and some other MMOs. Come over to Guild Wars 2, kind of be somewhat hesitant throughout the whole thing, but wanted to give it a shot because they really wanted to try it. And then when they did get to 80 and got to that point, they were just sort of like, I don't know what am I doing this for? They lost the fire because of not having this gear, not having a gear progression.
What I would say is not as much because. I guess you're almost saying the same thing. But those that I've seen lately, not because of gear progression, but rather they're trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing with a bunch of people at level 80 because they don't know. Because to get to level 18, it's like in World of Warcraft, wherever. We're going raiding, we need at least 10 people, we need 25 people, we need whatever, so we know that that's what our guild's there is for. And there are others are in guilds, and they'll be milling around going, well, let's go and run around 4 for a bit and do some farming of events, or let's do some dungeons like me and those 4 other people. And then there isn't the sort of large scale content that you need organization for to keep a tight knit group together. And when you don't have that sort of social stickiness that you have in MMOs isn't that present at the moment.
And I guess it might be a hard question to throw to this group because I think players naturally tend to gravitate towards players of similar play style, and we end up playing with people who like the same type of game. So for us to kind of answer that might be a little bit skewed. I guess the other thing I'll throw out, both Liz and Richie, I want you guys to answer as well, but in your personal circle, but maybe even just how you maybe feel just by looking at the community in general, looking outside, does it feel like people have kind of, our numbers possibly in decline a bit from playtime? You can't say subs because there is none.
Right. I don't think that their numbers are at a dangerous level by any means, but there are definitely on Masterly comments every week we get someone who's like, no progression, I don't really want to play. And that's what's so tricky, is that because gear progression has become such a thing and it's such a reward factor for so many people, that if you don't have gear progression, it sounds like your entire community wants it. And if you do put it in, it sounds like your entire community is completely enraged. And that's just kind of the nature of the internet and the nature of forums. because you have so few people who are willing to post on them, and they're going to be extraordinarily vociferous about whatever it is they're posting. So
absolutely, it's hard to gauge. It's really hard to gauge from the outside looking at stuff like that. We do, the same thing when we make shows and stuff like that. It's almost impossible to do that because you're just looking at different sets of data. That's why ArenaNet's looking at a completely different set of data. They're looking at and tracking every single thing you're doing and not doing, so they know the actual real numbers, not what the perception looks like from the outside on the internet. Richie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before that this really works for me how the game is right now. But of course, I've heard people say that they need something more, and I agree with Scott. There's a little bit of a lack of social stickiness if you're trying to especially if you're dedicated more to the PvE side. You don't have like a reason to really have a set night to get together with friends and stuff like that, and so there is an impact there. Like I have a core group of friends that it's only a couple people, but we're playing it still, and we're still having a ton of fun. But one thing that's interesting is this game lends itself so much to, this new game's coming out, I want to check that out. And so you can kind of go away from it and come back so easily. And we've talked about that. That's a good thing. But it also kind of hurts in a way because people kind of put it on the back burner a lot and then just come back to it when they have new content, which I think is why they started going towards more of these one-time events. They want to actually really advertise those things, right? Because what better way to get people to say, you know what, I know that new game just came out that I really want to play, but this is a one-time event, I have to be there. So I think that's part of the strategy here.
It's a little glitch right there.
Yeah. So
it's gonna be interesting to see how this all plays out, especially when this all hits. It's gonna be really interesting to see how the forums blow up and how people sort of take to this new system and see if they expand it out. Scott, you had something?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, when I talked about the people who, it's not like everybody I know has jumped ship and run away from the game. It's not like this game's on its last legs or anything. It's ridiculous.
No, not at all. And I'm not insinuating. I didn't want to insinuate that because it really wasn't where I was going with it. It was more of
no, not at all. It was just the way I talked about it. It was almost like saying, well, there's tumbleweeds blowing by. It's not at all. I mean, my problem is I can't get to play the game enough at the moment, just being so busy, and I've got tons of stuff left to do. So it's not like there's not content out there. There's a ton of content out there. It's just down to whether does ArenaNet think that they need this as well on top of the content they're rolling out. I mean, we had the Halloween event. Got the 15th. They've got a massive new content coming out, and they're
cranking out content
all this time.
Yeah. It's just
the content.
I think this is just such a tricky thing, Like I think this is one of those things that even I think for a lot of gamers, even that think that they maybe don't want the gear progression. It's like you just don't know. It's like sometimes you don't know exactly what you want, what you gravitate towards, and like for a lot of MMO players, especially for a lot of MMO players who hop around, I think you always want something new, and you're looking for like changes to happen. Doesn't always necessarily and you might be like really feel like you're like really latched on to that, but you know what? It just might not be the truth that's exactly really what you want in a game. I know that kind of is hard to swallow, but the numbers don't lie. I actually want to know what everybody thinks out there. What do you guys think about this, and what do you think if Guild Wars 2 were to put gear progression in the entire game? What do you think? You think it's a terrible move? Do you think it's all right, or do you think that they're just testing something out and this is going to be the extent of it, or do you think that this is a test for something much larger? And that we will see a more robust system put in place. Leave a comment below in the show and let us know.
So many choices.
What'd you say?
So many choices.
There are so many choices. I'm going to throw another choice at you right now. And yes, we are giving away copies of Storm Legion Rift's brand new expansion. Hot on the presses. Come over to Gamebreaker.tv/giveaway. Click on the banner on the front page if you want. Come over. We still got copies left. We're going to be doing an 8-hour live stream tomorrow on Thursday, all day 2 Pacific PM to 11. But you can come over here and enter. You can come back every single day to increase your chances of winning a copy of Storm Legion. It also comes with the base game, so if you don't have Rift, you're totally good. We got you covered. So make sure to go over to Gamebreaker.tv/giveaway. Make sure you sign up today. for the giveaway. And if you guys have not checked it out, go over to stormlegion.com. Purchase Storm Legion today. All right, so the Lost Shores event page has been updated with a ton of new info, and of course we got a new video of the brand new dungeon called Fractals of the Mist. Let's check that out. Smooth jazz. Smooth as jazz. Creepy, ethereal, sound effects are creepy. Is that what snow sounds like? White noise.
Yeah, there was a Yeti up there.
What's that making? That's what I want to know.
Something very dangerous.
Oatmeal.
Corn paste.
I gotta say though, seriously, so right off the bat, like we're only like halfway through this thing already. How many environments, completely different environments, does this dungeon have? I feel like I'm time traveling.
Nine.
But it feels like you're time traveling. Like they're so vastly different. It's all over the place.
Colossus.
What is that guy?
Dr. Manhattan.
I don't know, but he looks kind of like he's being held captive. Do you think we get to unlock him and save him? I think he needs to be saved.
I think he should stay there.
I don't think so.
I disagree with Richie.
He's the cause of the agony.
I want to save that guy.
I don't believe so.
Come on, I was always a fan of Vader.
Until the freak.
No, the sound is off again. No. All right, but so if people don't really know, we've got a ton of info on this. Richie, you fill me in a little bit if people don't know exactly how does this dungeon work and what makes it so unique?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The Fractals of the Mist is actually 9 separate kind of like little mini encounters, mini dungeons. And when you zone into the kind of hub area, you can queue up with a group of 5 people, and you get a random assortment of 3 of these 9 encounters that you can go through. And if your group successfully completes it, you get to come back to the hub area to recuperate, and then the difficulty level increases for the next run. And every 2 times you complete a set of fractals, you get a special kind of mini boss that's kind of like, they said, kind of like the world boss encounters that your group gets to go for. And it's a limitless progression where it keeps getting harder and harder. They kind of look at the last level that everyone in your group has completed, and they kind of make it harder and harder. And you keep getting a set of random 3 of these fractals that you're seeing here. So
limitless progression makes my head hurt. It's like a circle.
Endless.
Infinity. Dungeon of Infinity.
Circle of strife.
But seriously, so basically every time you run through this, they're going to make it harder and harder, and they're actually going to add stuff in there. I mean, I wonder, this is something, do you think that they're going to track this and sort of do like a leaderboard thing so people can compete on how many times they can get through it?
It'd be nice.
Yeah.
I think that's a logical thing, because if not, again, you're going to have to keep on going through it. The only reason to get the ascending gear, I guess, other than to have it, is to, be able to go further and further. So it'd be nice to show how far you've got doing that.
What do you think? What do you think about the future? What do you think about future dungeons? Do you think that they would do this for almost all dungeons? Is there a reason not to?
Well, I mean, unless they had every other dungeon set in the mists, which would be kind of boring after time. So the whole idea is that this takes place, from what we understand from the title, in the mists, which are kind of like this proto-matter between the worlds in Guild Wars 2 lore. So assuming that other dungeons are set in the actual physical, tangible world, that would not be possible.
Yeah, I think that you get a better story, right, out of a dungeon that's set in the real world, and this is kind of cool for being able to whisk you away to all different places, because really the mist is kind of like it's kind of like the holodeck in Star Trek, right? It's like anything is possible because it's tied to the mist, and you kind of can go crazy with the design, which is really kind of cool. And but yeah, I don't think they would take this route always going in the future.
Now, along with this, we're also going to get, with the Lost Shores, we're getting a new PvP map, Temple of the Silent Storm. Who else completely facepalmed when you found out that it was on an iceberg?
How funny is that?
I was like, oh, this is the iceberg of which we saw the tip.
Oh,
Gosh,
that's, yes.
who guessed?
Maybe, who knows? Yeah, if you guys don't remember when ArenaNet totally teased us with that article on their blog called like PvP in the iceberg or something like that. I don't know, something. Everyone on the show thought that the new PvP map that they were releasing was going to be some sort of an iceberg. And it wasn't.
So we were right. We were just very early.
Or they just watched the show of GuildCast and said, "Hey, that's a great idea. Let's do that." Because I'm sure they didn't have it in a couple weeks. Yeah, just whip that up. Just get that together. So what about the one thing is there's very little information about the map, but so far one thing that seems really interesting is it's going to be a very vertical based map, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be like a bunch of little dojos, and it's going to be Kodan themed, right? And people can meditate in different rooms and get certain buffs and stuff like that. And like you said, it's going to be vertical. And then there was some news about there's a boss that you can beat in there, and if you defeat the boss, your team gets ownership of all of the nodes. That's correct, right? That sounds pretty crazy.
I don't remember if it's a boss, but there's something that will let you reset all the nodes for yourself. So you essentially gain control of all 3 capture points, which is a significant sort of thing.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
Sounds like a pretty interesting map. On top of all that, there's obviously going to be the island itself coming, new gem store items, and of course you got the ascended gear. I got to say, on paper, for an update, like we said, just after this Halloween event, not that far after launch, pretty impressive update. ArenaNet also gave us a calendar of events that are going on so that we can expect for the Lost Shores. But I just think a lot of people were looking forward to this to actually know when stuff's happening. We were talking about the time of events and like people missing one-off events and things like that. So looking at the calendar, fortunately, it looks as if the case is that there's only one portion of the events that they could possibly miss, right? That the only one that's going to happen once, I believe, if I'm correct, is on Sunday at 12 Pacific.
That's the one-off big be there or miss it event, isn't it? The other stuff goes on for hours.
So things start on Friday and Saturday at 12 Pacific, but you don't have to be there right on time, right?
It's kind of what it sounds like. You know, the first part's going to kick off on noon on Friday, and it's going to be 16th. Some sort of it's going to be an invasion of Lion's Arch, right? But it sounds like it might be something cool right as it kicks off, but it sounds like as long as you're able to log in at some point during there, you'll be able to participate in it.
Do we know exactly what we're fighting against on this battle? This Lion's Arch battle?
The Karka.
The Karka.
Yeah. Jumping out.
So then on Saturday the 17th, you'll be pushing them back out of Lion's Arch and following them to their home turf. That's South Sun Cove. Is that an island? Is that an island from Guild Wars 1?
Nope, brand new. It's in the Sea of Sorrow, so we assumed that it rose when Zaitan did, or just kind of popped up, and we magically didn't see it before then. Not really sure about the lore on that yet, but yeah, it's brand new.
So then on Sunday, the 18th is the only one that you're definitely going to mark your calendars. Make sure that you do not want to miss this. So on the 18th, they'll put us against the ancient Karka, which I am presuming a world boss.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Sounds like a big thing. Yeah, no, interesting thing about the Karka is what they said is they have this new shader technology going in place, because the whole mechanic with the Karka is that they have this impenetrable shell, right? And players are going to have to figure out through events and stuff how to actually penetrate this shell, otherwise you can't defeat them. And they have this shader technology going on these mobs where as you start to chip away at their armor, you can see parts of it falling off. So now the Guild Wars 2 monsters will have authentic battle damage. So it's cool stuff.
Mark your calendars. Don't miss on Sunday. 12 Pacific is the big one, but it kicks off on Friday. Let's do some viewer questions, but really quick, I want to tell you guys about a great deal we got going on with Audible. If you guys have not checked out Audible, go to audible.com/Gamebreaker. Got a free book and 30-day trial on here. All you got to do is use the URL audible.com/Gamebreaker. Going to give you a free book, free 30 days. Audible. I'm a huge fan of Audible. Huge fan. I'm going to pick up this new Star Wars book that Larry was pushing on me in The Republic. forget which one it is. The X-Wing one. I don't know. Chat room will remember, but it sounds really good. So check it out. Go over to audible.com/Gamebreaker. Sign up today. Get a free book. Get a free 30-day trial. All right. First up, viewer question from TJ Vossals. TJ loves us. TJ loves sending in the questions, man. We got like a question a week from TJ. He says, should ArenaNet just remove item rarity and normalize all weapon and armor? Because I see no other way to end the queuing that is going on about something that is already in game. If rare to exotic gear isn't considered gear progression, then why should exotic to ascended gear be considered progression? Does he have a point? Does he have a point?
No, because again, like when ArenaNet was saying, hey, we're not going to have progression, everybody was like, hey, give us progression. So again, like if you have nothing whatsoever to differentiate between things, people are going to get bored and go away and feel like they have nothing to strive for.
So what do you think? Should they just remove it? Normalize it?
No. I think they should be very careful about adding more, but I don't think normalization is the way.
Yeah, I mean, we talked this to death earlier, but there is gear progression all through the leveling up process, and even when you get to level 80, right? You go from the blue, the fine, to the masterwork, to the rare, to the exotic. So you do get increasing power. So and that's fun and all. But I think what everybody loved, the fact that it plateaued at a certain point, and you can experience all the content once you get to that plateau, and you don't have to worry about grinding out more gear in order to see new content. So ascended level may not be another thing to worry about if they stop there, but the worry is it's going to keep going.
All right, next up from Wouter Verbeck. Actually, really quick, I'm hooking you up, chat room. Everybody in chat room's they're all confused, and they're all worried about Netflix, the deal going away. Nope, still go to netflix.com/GameBreaker TV, sign up. There you go, another commercial. They're all worried. I saw like 10 people in chat go, what happened to Netflix? It's still available. You can still go.
Oh, no.
There you go. You just gave me a reason to throw in another plug. There you go. Wouter Verbeck says, would the new dungeon in the Lost Shores bring people back and keep them interested enough in the game to keep playing? Since there's some sort of progression which wasn't there before, although most of it will probably be cosmetic. Bit of a loaded question from start to finish, but we'll stick with it. So, I don't know. Does anybody think that the new dungeon is going to bring people back? I would hope so. Isn't that the point of new content?
Yes.
That's a weird question.
I would think that if you bring something new into the game, then the point of it is to A, keep the people who are playing already playing, and B, the ones who have taken a break to come back. So yes, that's what it's there to do. In the question of progression, I don't understand. I don't get it. There's some sort of progression which wasn't there before. Yes, that's true in the gear progression, but at the moment, if you think that two pieces is enough to bring you back to the game, then great, but I would hope that it's actually the quality of the content that is going to want to keep people coming back, rather than 2 pieces of item.
I do think Gary hit it home before when he asked if there should be some sort of leaderboard with this system, and there absolutely should be. They did those things in Guild Wars 1, and if they actually had like a leaderboard showing these are the people that got the furthest in the Fractals of the Mist, people will go nuts over that. So I definitely hope that that's in there, or that they put it in at some point.
Sure, they're working on it. Next up from Dave Landers, last up says, what type of medication is required for people to chill the flip out? Bravo. Elixabeth Claire, follow her on Twitter at Elixabeth Claire. Of course, go over to massively.com and read all her great Guild Wars 2 stuff over there. Richie Procopio is back. He's not a Yeti, and his Twitter is Richie Procopio. Follow him on the Twitter at Richie Procopio, and of course, go over to his YouTube channel, Bog Otter, and read all his amazing work right here on Gamebreaker.tv. And Mr. Scott Hawks, follow him on Twitter at Jarimor, Jarimor, and of course, go to Zam.com. And all of their network of sites. Too many to list. You can follow me on Twitter at Gary Gannon and follow Gamebreaker TV at Gamebreaker TV. We do the show live every single Wednesday at 6 PDT, so come on over for the live show. We'll do it again next week. Love you guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.